Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're connected from, and welcome to Creatives Workshop. Well, it's a pleasure once again to be here, connected with all of you, wherever you're connected from in this initiative that we bring to you from All Dance International. This is an initiative that it contains 20 different workshops that are based on our All Dance International techniques and rules, guidelines, and modalities. We have 24 different techniques, 45 different modalities, and this initiative is here to bring a little bit of light and some guidelines that will help you in your creative process for your competitive choreographies. Now, for this space and for All Dance International, it is very important to create and to always bring new methods and processes that can guarantee the fulfillment of all the objectives of the organization and, of course, the professionalization, and the growth in the world industry of dance in general and the dancers as well. I want to thank especially All Dance International and Maria Fernanda Castro, our All Dance International General Director, for making these spaces possible and for always bringing new ideas and new ways to improve in our consistency and all our competitive and dance progress. So thank you very much. Well, of course, thank you guys also for being here, for being present, and always being part of the All Dance family and the All Dancers in general. Now, today we are here for one of our 20 workshops. It is a very wonderful modality we're going to see today, and we have two very special guests that are going to be with us in this modality that is K-pop. We're going to be seeing with them all the little details that contain this modality. What are the important things to keep in mind when we're doing our creative process, and all the information that you may need in order for your choreographies to be a complete hit and always take them to not the next level, but the highest level. These are professionals that love to teach, love dance, and are always striving to help and improve the dance industry and the dancers, and are wonderful teachers, human beings, and artists all around. So thank you very much for being here. We have Fufo Rosario and Carlos Duque. Welcome.
Hi, Sandra. Thank you. Thank you for having us today. We're really happy to be here, and I'll be joining you in Fufo's place today. And we're just beyond excited to help you explain the parameters of the K-pop modality, which is still under the Urban Dancers umbrella, and that's what we live for.
Thank you very much. Well, yes, now as you can see, well, we're gonna be here, well, a little bit of while sharing every detail you need to know about this specific modality today pertaining K-pop, the industry of Korean pop, especially that we are going to be seeing all the details. If you have any questions, do not doubt to ask. If you're watching us on YouTube, well, don't forget we have our comment section, follow and like as well. And without further ado, I'll leave you here with Duque, that is going to be sharing with us all this information that is going to be helping in our creative process. Duque.
Sure. So let's start with the K-pop modality. Here in All Dance, we explain the K-pop modality as a genre that fuses various styles of music, such as electronic dance, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, rock, R&B, and pop. It is based on the exact interpretation of the dance routine, including pirouettes, characterizations, synchronizations, and clothing of the Korean groups to be imitated. This is a cover in the K-pop language. And so we're seeking to maintain the aesthetics and choreography composition with fidelity. So we need to stick to the covers, okay? Stick to the covers of the K-pop groups or artists. Also, we need to note, if we can put the next, yes, thank you. So we need to note that the chosen topics must be K-pop. We are in the K-pop modality, so we need to stick to that. The choreographies must be the originals of the chosen groups, and there will be playback, costumes, and the shoes that must be according to the group being imitated. It must not contain within the same choreography proposal mixtures of the different groups of artists, but we can do pick the live openings of the artist that we're doing. So if you're gonna choose a song of the artist, you can also mix the opening of that song or the opening of the artist of some live show you choose. And also, as a second note, you need, when you register for the K-pop modality and you fill the registration form, please indicate the name of the group and the song to be performing the choreography. It is very important that every choreography registered in K-pop modality, the director, choreographer, or dancer must send the link of the video to be presented on a mandatory basis. Because as judges or as an organization, there is no way to be like a full library of the whole genre. So we need to be aware of what you're choosing to do.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, these are the main details that are part of the K-pop, let's say, criteria that will help in your, well, all the process of registration, of your creative process, and some elements that will be important for this. We're going to see more details when we go on to the other items that we're going to be seeing today. Now, the first element that we're going to be going over is, well, pertaining the dancers that are going to be interpreting these K-pop artists in these choreographies. Now, when we are doing a choreography for these dancers, there's one thing we need to mainly count on is what level these dancers are in. What is their, well, their knowledge generally about dance. So this is why we have developed in All Dance International our levels, our competitive levels. This is in order to give the dancers a very positive competitive environment for them to have a safe space where it is fair, where they can compete against the peers that are in their equal or somewhat equal level in dance in general. Now, when we talk about levels, we have 4 general levels that are new all dancers, student, pre-professional, and professional. And in total, we have 7 different levels where they are going to be also some of them combined. Now, first of all, and overall, keep in mind that our levels are not based on the experience that the dancers have on a specific modality or technique. So this means it doesn't matter how many years they've been dancing, how many competitive experiences they have, or what they have been doing. We cannot see that on stage. So what will be taken into account is what we see in the performance, the technical level, the difficulty level of the elements that are in the choreography, and in general for the dancers. So our new all dancers will be dancers that are new all dancers in every modality, not just here in K-pop, but overall, and that are just basic dancers who are starting their process in learning dance, where they're just learning to to the dominium of their body, their spatial awareness, the musicality. And when we see technical and difficult elements in the choreography, they're going to be simple. We're not going to be seeing complex turns or doubles or triple turns. We're not going to be seeing big jumps with an extension of 180 degrees on both legs. If we're seeing some acrobatic elements, we're not going to be seeing acrobatic elements of high impact, if they're even included in the choreography, because normally it's not something very common seen in K-pop in the artist. But when we do see these elements, they should be with both hands on the ground or completely the whole body supporting on the ground. So these can be executed correctly by the new all dancers, and of course not be considered that they're more advanced, because when dancers are moving on, that they're starting to do more complex turns or starting to do more complex elements, well, then they will be considered student level dancers. Remember, it's not regarding how many years they've been training. We cannot see that. So if a choreography is already learning double turns, triple turns, then we see that this dancer has a better knowledge and dominion of their body, so they will be considered student dancers. In student level dancers, we do not have a limit on what elements that can be included in the choreography. They can be high complex elements, acrobatic, high impact elements, or simple elements as well. So here, that is one of the main differences. In new all dancers, we have dancers from 4 to 14 years old. And in student level dancers, we have from 6 years old and over. So that is also one of the elements that will be taken into account. Now, we also have our pre-professional level. So we always want to keep on going forward in life, artistically, and of course, technically in dance. So when these dancers and these student dancers start to go on to the next level and are advanced dancers who are part sometimes of a professional dance company, or are soloist dancers who are sometimes even student teachers, assistants in class, choreographers even, then they will be considered or pre-professional or professional. The main difference being that pre-professional dancers will be the dancers from 15 years and over. And if you're a teacher and you're over 18 years old, when you will be considered a pre-professional dancer. If we're a teacher, choreographer, or we're sharing our knowledge, but we're over 18, then we will be considered a professional dancer. So that's one of the main differences here. And well, how can we be over age and maybe pre-professional dancers? Pre-professional dancers that are over 18 will be those dancers that have a high level, high technical execution, a lot of maybe a competitive experience, but are not teachers, are not choreographers, are not assistants in class, just are a high level students or starting just this process in the pre-professional level. But normally, over 18, most of the times we see professional dancers. And then we have our levels where we can combine these basic levels. How? We have our open student where we can combine and see combination of new all dancers and students in the same performance. We have our open pro where we see some pre-professionals and professional dancers sharing stage as well. And we have our open level where it is open, all levels, all ages, open production, large groups. For these large productions that sometimes we bring to stage that include even new all dancers or professional dancers, student dancers, and pre-professional, here we can mix all the levels without any restriction, all ages, same, but it should be large group open production. So these are the levels, the way we have designed them for a competitive, positive competitive environment where they can grow, and just environment as well. And the expectations, depending on the level and on the ages specifically in dance and in this modality, will vary a little bit, of course. So here I'm going to ask Duque to maybe share some insight for the choreographers on what will be expected of the dancers in these different levels. And of course, it will help the election of the choreography you are going to use in K-pop.
Thank you, Sandra. For my experience, I have learned that in the K-pop modality, we can see two types of dancers. And I learned this when we were competing in the K-pop World Festival in Panama. Generally, we have two types of dancers. The first one is dancers like me who have previous training on other urban styles and then decided to do K-pop also. But we also find these dancers that started on K-pop, have no training in other styles, but they learn everything from the K-pop. So these two types of dancers, we need to be careful if we are the second type of dancers that learn everything from K-pop, because K-pop is a modality that they can incorporate, you know, a really big amount of dance styles, from jazz to hip hop to everything in between, and that's maybe everything Afro dance. They can incorporate any style. So sometimes when we're learning the choreography of the idol and we are that type of dancer, we're learning styles and we don't even know what we're learning. So if you're that kind of dancer, also please try to, every time you learn a choreography from an idol, also try to learn about the style so you can master that technique of the style you are actually executing, you know. Also, an advice for all of these levels is that the lip sync is well appreciated, because at the end you have to, this modality is a little bit alike Alden's show, because you need to make that character and make that characterization well developed, you know. So that energy of this idol you're choosing needs to match the energy of the dancer in order to be like a really, really, really good K-pop choreography, because it's not just learning the choreography, but learning everything from the cover. So these tips are all for all the levels, most of all, and also be aware of learning the techniques you're learning, as I said in the beginning. That's my tip for all the levels here.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I really hope it helps a lot, because these details are important and will, of course, are one of the elements and some elements that can help in that creative process and choosing also the choreography and how we prepare for these choreographies as well. Now, we already saw what levels we have and how we can use them to advantage of our dancers. Now let's see all the other elements that are going to be part of the scoring method. In All Dance International, we have developed a scoring method based on our principles and based on our views for the competitive environment and for it to be a positive and fair process for the dancers. And for this, we have a responsibility with 3 judges. We have our Modality Judge that can be awarding a maximum of 70 points of the 100 points maximum possible in All Dance International, and who will also be giving a lot of feedback on each one of the performances to help in this process also. And we have the Complementary Judge that can be awarding the maximum of 30 that would complete those 100 point scores maximum possible in All Dance International, with some specific criteria that each one is going to be looking for and that we're going to go over. And we have our Deduction Judge that isn't going to award scores, but in some cases, if intended or if needed, do some particular deductions. And we're also going to see those specific criteria. So in this case, we can avoid the deductions and of course have the highest score possible. Now we're going to see each one of the criteria and the items that are going to be scored and evaluated. And we're going to see the different scores possible or points possible for each one of these criteria. And we're going to see they're not all the same. Some have 10 points, 5 points, 2 points, 1.5. But what is going to be a consistency as the judges are going to be having a rank where they are going to be working on, and based on an average score for every one of the different criteria, that would be the basic expectations, the minimum expectations for these criteria, where we can always sometimes go above average and surpass these expectations and have those scores that are almost perfect in these criteria, and sometimes a little bit below average, where some elements we still have to work on and strive to correct and perfection, so we can eventually get to that average score and then move forward and go above average. So this is going to help us when we get our scores back to see where we are doing very well, where we're doing okay, and where we can still be working on to even surpass our own expectations as well. Now, let's see these criteria one by one so we can see how they work and how we can apply them in a better way in our choreography and our performances. Now, the Modality Judge, remember, he or she can give a maximum of 70 points. And we're going to be seeing first the specific technique that is divided into different criteria: the correct modality and the technical level. When we're speaking of correct modality, well, today we're here talking about K-pop. So we're going to be seeing that the elements that are in the choreography and all the composition of the choreography is in fact part of the K-pop industry and culture. So here is what all the details that Duque already shared with us earlier come into play and are very important, so we can have the highest score possible. And in the technical level, we're going to be seeing all the elements in the choreography that are interpreted by the dancers that will be, of course, according to the level of the dancers and the ages of the dancers, but all those elements on the execution, the dominium of the body, and the technical execution of the elements in the choreography. And as Duque shared with us, well, here a lot of techniques come into play and a lot of different elements, and well, then they will be, of course, here scored and, let's say, evaluated. We also have the criteria of execution. In execution will be scored the synchronization and the skill. When we're talking about synchronization, well, here specifically in Kpop, it's equally as important as in other dances, but it's something that has a very high visual impact because, of course, the synchronization with the artist as a group, with the music, because, of course, they're the ones interpreting the song. So it does have to have a very precise synchronization. So here it's going to be very important. And, of course, the skill. The skill in which the dancer or the dancers are executing the choreography. So each one of the elements that are there, at each technical element, the transitions of each one of the movements, the ability with the lip singing, all of these elements will come into apply in the skill of the execution. And here we have also difficulty. In the difficulty, we're going to be seeing extraordinary movements and elements of risk. So here, when we're talking about extraordinary movements and elements of risk, we're talking about not only what we normally think when we hear these words that are acrobatic elements or maybe doing difficult flips or elements like that, that if we include will be included here, but we're talking about all the difficult and different elements that can involve a risk and that are extraordinary inside these techniques that are used in the choreography. So here are the virtuous elements that are contained, all these little details, not only if we do a whole bunch of gymnastic or acrobatic elements, that here it's not even something that normally is expected because we are depending on the choreography you choose. So it's also important to keep in mind what choreographies you're going to choose. And of course, the level of the dancers for the execution and the election also of the elements of risk and extraordinary movements we're going to include in our choreography. So here, Duque, what insight, maybe tips or elements that maybe I even avoided or maybe forgot to include that will help these choreographers in their process?
Well, Sandra, for me, it's really easy to hit those 10 points in the correct modality, because if you stick to the rules, not only in K-pop, but in every modality, you're going to have those 10 points, For the K-pop modality, though, if you stick to the cover and you focus on the dance and the characterization, you are mostly going to hit those 10 points. As of technical level, as I said before, be aware of knowing that technique you're performing. Don't just learn the choreo, but also, get insight of the dances you're doing. And for the difficulty, we as judges know and have seen most of the idol videos. And if not, when you're registering for that choreo, we make sure to know exactly what you're doing. So we really appreciate when a dancer or a group perform the whole routine with the highlights, with the difficult steps, with the stunts and everything. And we know when you decided to change those difficult parts for an easy part. And so we can, see if you're doing the whole thing. It doesn't matter if it's difficult or not, and we appreciate that. So try to stick to the energy of the idol, try to stick to the cover, to the original routine, and it doesn't matter if it's difficult or easy. We appreciate when you're sticking to that.
Well, of course, perfect. A lot of important tips and things to keep in mind that will help in this process. So thank you. Now, the modality judge also has these criterias, these other 3 criterias that he or she will be looking for in the choreography. And one is the musicality, but that will be divided in musical interpretation and music. Here, the musical interpretation is how we use the music on our movements, on our interpretation, and of course here in the part of interpretation in the lip singing, and all of these elements is going to be very important. And the music per se, that is the correct music for the modality. And if we're doing editing the music and the music has an addition, well, the quality and how this is done is also going to be taken into account in this specific criteria. Now, speaking of the choreography is going to be subdivided in two, in the costume and the complexity. So here the costume has an important piece of importance because the costume is part of how we are going to be portraying these specific characters in K-pop. So the choreography, the costume and the choreography have a direct correlation that should be present, and is why one of the elements that is important that Duque was telling us when we do our registration to say which one of the versions we're going to be using of these artists and what is the costume is specific for this. And it's also another reason why we shouldn't mix different artists, because the costume is going to be scored and we want to have as many points as we can for this. And when we're speaking of complexity, we're talking about the complexity of the choreography. We already talked about the let's say the difficult elements in the choreography when we're talking about elements of risk and those elements. But here we're talking about the choreography as a whole and the complexity of this composition of the choreography. And here we have another element that would be creativity. Here in K-pop specifically, the creativity is going to be scored in a different way than normally would be in other modalities. So here, this creativity, we're gonna have it there on standby, and we're gonna share in a little bit how this element will be scored in K-pop. So for now, some details that can help or can guide these choreographers in these specific criteria that are very important here in K-pop. What can you share with us, Duke?
Well, just as the topic says, musicality, same as modality, we need to stick to the right interpretation of the cover and dance to the beat exactly as the idol do. Use the right music. If you are going to add some sound effect, try to not make it go against the beat or against the cover that the idol is doing, because you can mix between maybe two different live shows of the same song or maybe the intro, but try to make it clean, nice, and good for the audience and for the judges to hear, because sometimes when we're doing mashup or mixes, we end up making it a little bit awkward for the actual cover that we're choosing. For the costume, I know maybe it's difficult sometimes to get the exact costume of the idols, so try to make it as similar as you can, but it's the intention what matters, okay? And as for the creativity, as Sandra said, just like little tips I can give. Sometimes the music videos have effects we can add to the choreographies in like in back dancers way, or figures or transitions we can make with the dancers to recreate those special effects that the video have. So try to make it creative, sorry, okay? Try to put into your dance, into the stage, things that we're not expecting, but that are there in the video. That's something that can make it creative and that nobody's going to expect, because maybe it's not like a step of dance, but it's something that's still there,
Okay, yes, always very important to be creative and will of course be there. Now, remember, in here, since we are not doing our own choreography, we're taking elements of somebody else. Well, here we have to not only be creative of how we're going to use it, but specifically also we're looking for the choreography as it was composed and it was created for these artists. So here, we're going to have a different element that we are going to be scoring, different from the other modalities that will be used in and ballet repertoire and K-pop covers. Now, each cover will be graded under 3 different items that will include complete adaptation, partial adaptation, and no adaptation. Here, what we are looking for in these 2 modalities is that no adaptation is made, or the adaptations that are made, well, how we are going to be using them. As alike as we can of the choreography, that is basically that we look at the choreography and we are seeing these artists on stage and we're seeing the choreography and the whole performance as original as possible, we're going to be seeing high scores here. When we're doing some adaptations, well, we'll have some score around here. Partial adaptations will be some elements that we maybe change or adapt because maybe they're the singers aren't dancing but are interpreting, and we wish to add some elements in the backup dancers, or because the video, I don't know, any element, maybe the choreography is too difficult and we're doing more simple steps. We have to take care of how we're doing these adaptations, and we have to be aware that what we are doing is an adaptation, and that of course here will be scored. And when we're doing a complete adaptation, that means we're taking a K-pop song and we're doing our own choreography, our own performance, and we're not using the elements that are supposed to be there or are expected here in this modality. Well, then we'll have a low score here because it's a complete adaptation, and it should not be here in K-pop. That will be a whole other choreography where we just use music of K-pop, that we can use music of K-pop even in commercial dance or in other styles without a problem. But here in K-pop, we want to see the music and the choreography and all the details that Duke has shared with us. So here, that is the idea, to do a faithful representation of the original choreography here in this modality. So some elements maybe that can help Duke help guide them in what adaptations and how we can see these to have a better score.
No, I think it's really self-explained, this part. As long as you stick to the original and faithful choreography, you're gonna get a higher grade. And if you want to take those chances of doing a partial adaptation, that's up to you. These are the rules, and you know, it's almost self-explained, this part.
Perfect. Yes. Well, yes, very important. So, well, that's one of the elements that's going to be important. Now, we've seen the elements that are going to be, let's say, scored, and the points that can be awarded by the modality judge. Now, here we want to keep these in mind and always have them, I don't know, kind of on a checklist that see that we're using them in our choreography in the best way possible. Now, let's see the complementary judge, the different criteria that's going to be taken into place here. Now, in the complementary judge, we're going to be seeing the stage use. That's going to be the space, formations, levels, and transitions. And here, the use of the space, as in every performance, is going to be important. And we're talking about the use of the space is regarding how we actually use it. Not if we're filling the space, but how we fill it through movement by the dancers, 1, 2, 5, because if we're 20 dancers, the idea is not for it just to look full, but to use it and to fill it through the movement. The formations, the use of different formations, that some formations are already included in the choreography by the artist. That's obviously the idea that we're doing. So here we'll choose the formations that are not only for the choreography, but that will also help improve the impact that this choreography will give. The different levels, well, we have high, medium, middle, and low level in dance in general. And the idea is to use these levels to generate different impacts, to generate different dynamics and different densities in the music as well. And the transitions, when we're talking about transitions, is how we connect all these points, how we move through the space and go from point A to point B, how we go from our circle to our line, to our semicircles, to our diagonals, to our every formation that maybe we can include in our choreography, and how we go from one level to the other, how we connect one step to the other. So how we transit through the space and how we transit through the movements that will be here in this specific criteria. Also, the complementary judge will be scoring the image. Now, the image is a very important part of K-pop, and here we're going to have different elements that are going to be scored in this image process. The creativity that here comes into hand, all those elements, of course, of creativity that also Duque shared before, and here pertaining the creativity of what we see. When we first see the dancer on stage, what is that we can see? The costume, the makeup, all this representation of these characters. The accessories, well, of course, the accessories that will add to this personification of these characters, and that will be part of the choreography and the style of these artists. The makeup, well, makeup will be expected in any performance when we're on stage, not only in K-pop, for female and male dancers alike, because when we're on stage, we have one important detail: we have lights. And when we have lights and we have a distance in the audience, well, we need to emphasize our expressions, our different facial elements. And when we have lights, normally we can't even see the eyes. Sometimes the lips disappear and the facial expressions. So it's very important to do an emphasis on these elements for the audience and the public to be able to enjoy the performance as it was intended. And here, well, we want to portray a specific character, and this will also help do this. And in general, the visual aesthetics is how all of these elements come together to reinforce our characters, are the essence of these performers and these performances. So here, it's a very important element in not only dance in general, but here in K-pop, specifically on the election of the choreography we are going to be using. So here, maybe Duque has some tips that can be very useful in these elections as well.
Sure. So as Sandra said before, in the stage use, it may sound like we're expecting you to use the whole space, to use formations, levels, and transitions. But in K-pop modality, be aware that we know what you're doing. We know what you're supposed to do, thanks to the video. And we can, translate this stage use to incorporate these topics on the true choreography that they are doing on the video. So respect the choreography. You don't need to add transitions that are not there. You don't need to add formations that are not in the video, unless you want to do the partial adaptation, but that's up to you. But if you stay true to the original choreography, we will score the right stage use for this choreography. And for the image, be aware of giving attention to those details that the idols and the dancers have on the video, because that's the difference between a character and some dancer just wearing a costume of the idol. Try to know what your idol looks like. If he or she always use 3 rings on her ear, maybe, and you have that on your characterization, that will be really, really good appreciated, because that's what makes the difference, the details.
Yes, detail, detail, detail. Very important. Those little elements that are going to be adding every time into this characterization. Also, well, keep in mind, and that's why we also ask in the registration what version of the choreography is, because also it's very different. The space used, the levels, the formations that we're going to see on the videos that we are going to see of the artists on their live performances, concerts. So maybe choose the version that will be better scored, and that can help you use all these elements also in your choreography. So little details that can be kept in mind. Now, the complementary judge also is going to be scoring the performance projection. Another element and details that can add to all these characters that we're going to be having on stage. Now, here, the gestuality. Well, here, the interpretation, we're going to be seeing the lip singing, all the gestures, all the expressions, the body expressions also, and the communication through all the movement that are small details and characteristics of these characters. The authenticity of the character. Here, when we're talking about a character, we're not talking about a character that is maybe somewhat just kind of, let's say, a general dancer, but we're talking about a specific character that has a personality, that has certain details that are important and that should be there, and of course will make it more authentic. So that is going to be important here in the authenticity of the character, the movements that they're doing that will be also part of the character in this performance and this music and the choreography. The force of the movement, this will be part of the quality of the movement we're seeing. That depends on the force that we're implying, if it's soft, if it's sharp, if it's very strong, what is the force and what the quality of the movement this force will let's say, imply when we're going to be seeing it, and of course should correspond with the original element and the quality of the movement that's in the original choreography. And overall, the interpretation, where all of these elements come together, where we can see how the entertainer, in this case, is communicating all these elements to the audience and how they are connecting with the public. And in this case, let's say their fans, that when they're artists, well, all of their support is going to be with the fans. Now, speaking of fans and speaking of audience, we have our public response criteria. That's where you guys come in to be part of our judging panel. So all of the fans that are there, that are main fans when we're artists, are our parents, our family, our friends. But here, fans are going to be everybody in the audience with us. In the virtual space, in the present space, everybody that's going to be there on the social media. So how we are supporting these dancers is an important part of their process, and also is a way of us to give them the voice to be not only support in the emotional aspect, but also in the scoring process. So here, everybody and all those fans and all those supporters enter into our scoring process and have a vote and have a score in this element. And of course, well, the enjoyment and the entertainment of the choreography should be important, so that the audience actually enjoys the performance and you have all that support. Now, in this element, that the performance projection is an important part of every performance on stage, but here in Kpop is going to be an important element. Well, Duque can give us a little more insight and details that can help you in this process.
Sure. For me, the performance projection, it's a complement between body and face, you know. Please don't think that if you're lip singing in the K-pop modality, that's going to give you a perfect score, because the face is not only the mouth, you know. You can be lip singing, but your eyes need to still give us something. Your whole face need to transmit the message you're trying to transmit. And also we need to see the body gestuality as the characters does. You need to stick to the energy of the idol. So try to complement face and body to give us the perfect performance projection that we're looking for. It depends on each idol. Some are strong, some are more soft, some are more sexy, you know. You need to match that energy. And the public response, it's related to that performance you're giving us, because if you're giving us a weak performance, also the public is going to feel that, and maybe you're going to be cheering up by your people, but you need the whole audience to cheer you up. You need the whole audience to, you know, at the end get on their feet and applaud. And that's what we're looking for. The perfect performance projection will also wake up the public and make it root for you.
Yes, a lot of details to keep in mind, very important. And yes, that is the idea. We're looking for everybody to always be giving their best on stage. And well, this will be, of course, valued and very much appreciated in each performance. Now, these are the elements that can add to our score. The modality and the complementary judge that are going to be looking for. So each one has the impact it should on the choreography and have different scores. Now, we're going to go to our third judge, that are the criteria that instead of wanting to have them there, we want to avoid them. So here's where we can maybe lose points. And well, if you are here learning about them, well, it's going to be much easier, because then you can apply them and not have any of the deductions. So here we can add more and not have any subtracted. Now, we're going to go through them. We can see at the right side the value that will be, let's say, deducted for each one of the criteria. And we can see that most of them are elements that we can avoid. So very, very important to keep that in mind. And that is what we want. And that's why we're here with you, sharing this information, because we want you to avoid it. We do not want to do the deductions. We do it because it is fair for the dancers, because it is part of the competitive and positive competitive environment that we want to generate for the dancers. So let's begin. 1, wrong modality. Remember when we were talking about the complete adaptation, that we're not doing the correct elements that should be in K-pop? Well, here comes where it also belongs in some other modalities. So that is where we would consider it a wrong modality, because it does not have enough elements to, let's say, consider it K-pop. So all the little details that Dukas has been sharing with us, well, the idea is to put them in the choreography so we can avoid maximum possible of this criteria here, that we do not want it whatsoever. The other one is wrong division. When we're talking about wrong division, the division is about the age groups, how they are divided by age, that we also have the divisions according to the ages of the dancers, so they compete in their own age range. Now, that is going through our organic code. If not, you can go to YouTube on our first workshop here in Creative Workshop, that we went through all the details of the organic code, including the division, so you can see how you can apply them and which division works for your choreography and your performers, okay? Now, wrong level. Wrong level, as you can see, is not only a high deduction, it is the highest deduction in our all dance organic code. This is not in order to, let's say, punish dancers, but in order to reward the dancers that are doing the correct level, and to generate a fair environment for those dancers. So no new all dancer has to compete against a student or even a pre-professional, and no student has to compete against a pre-professional or professional dancer. So it is fair for all the dancers on stage as they are performing the choreography. And this goes, of course, to the well-being of everybody. And you guys that are here are going to see the benefits of choosing the correct level for these dancers. Now, late arrival to stage. Well, here it's that being on stage on time. When we do our registration, well, and registration closes, we're going to be sending each one of you our preliminary program or schedule. Sorry. And then in that schedule, we're going to be able to see a lot of details, the details of the choreography, the choreographer, the number of dancers. And in those information, we're also going to see the amount of dancers, the routine time, and we're going to be seeing especially what time, approximate schedule that is going to be, let's say, programmed for that choreography. Remember, it's an approximate time. So we always tell the dancers, and it is recommended to get there 2 hours in advance. So we're not there on time, but we're there with time enough to do our makeup, to be ready, to, of course, be there when we are called to be on stage and on backstage. And this is going to be a part of the late arrival on stage. So always be there with enough time to be there for your performance when you are called. We have also false routine start. The false routine start will be considered after the choreography, the music sounds. If the dancer moves and starts the choreography and by any reason has to restart, it will be considered a false routine start, unless in the case that it is asked to do so by the judges because of any element that may be needed for that. But if the music starts and the dancer begins, then it will, the ideal is to continue the choreography. Forbidden elements. When we're talking about forbidden elements, we're talking about forbidden elements in general for All Dance International. And this is to maintain the safety and the security of all the dancers and everybody on stage, off stage, and in the competition. Now, we want to keep this stage safe for the dancers on stage and the dancers that will be next on stage as well. So no elements as a liquid, fire, dust in any way, or grease, elements that are based on oily based elements, substances, or any element that can create or fire or an injury in any dancer will be of course recommended and may cause a forbidden element deduction. So to keep that is always in mind. Also, the excessive use of acrobatic or gymnastic elements is, some modalities have a minimum of elements, acrobatic elements, some have a maximum. Here will, of course, the acrobatic elements will be regarding the choreography, the original choreography that is intended here in K-pop. Makeup, a body paint, inappropriate, obscene, or offensive clothing. Well, the clothing should be proper to the K-pop modality and should be age appropriate as well. No body painting is permitted or expected, especially here in K-pop, that, well, it's not part of the aesthetics of this style of dance anyway. Poorly executed elements. Well, the poorly executed elements, we are regarding the technical elements in the choreography from where they are, let's say, taken. As we heard earlier, here in K-pop, we don't have just one style of dance, but there are different elements from different styles and different techniques. So all the elements that we're including from these techniques should have a correct execution. So here, this is one element that is going to be also taken into account. Tripping or falling. Trippings are stumbles, instabilities, or elements that we almost failed the execution of an element, but we could save it, will have a deduction of 0.5. And fallings, when we completely fall, when we couldn't save the execution of the element, and that okay. We also have the throwing elements to the public or to the audience. This will be, well, if we have any element and we wish to generate maybe an impact by throwing it, or we need to place it, take it off, do not throw it to the audience. Do not throw it forward, place it on the stage, anywhere else, but please do not throw it to the audience. Inappropriate language or music. Here, keep in mind that the language that is going to be in the music that you are using for your choreography, that it does not have bad words, curse words, or any, let's say, foul language or obscene language that can have a sexual content, or just be offensive to any race, gender, or any sexual orientation of any movement. Is, let's say, kind of has a relationship with this, or movements that may have a sexual content or a specific sexual intention of the movements and are not for a family audience. That is what we are looking for in All Dance International. That's a multicultural and also family-based audience. We have sometimes even audience from 2-3 years old up to all ages from all cultures. So everybody should be included and be an inclusive language and body language as well. So these are the first elements and criteria that will be included in deduction. Here may be some insight or tips that may help in these elements, Duque.
Sure. First of all, I want to give you an insight of how I see the deduction judge. Personally, when I'm like in the judges table, the deduction judge, it's my favorite judge. I love sitting next to him or she. But when I compete, this is the judge that I am more fear of. That, you know, I'm sometimes worry about the deduction judge when I choreograph or when I dance, because as a choreographer, I like to think of the choreographies I take to the competition as they are 100% score at the moment they go on stage. And when they start dancing and through the whole dance, the deduction judge is going to be taking points from me, you know, because the modality judge and the complementary judge, they stick by the rules of what the modality should be having. And, you know, the choreographers nowadays have tools like these workshops that if you stick to these tools, you're going to have a deserved 10 points in modality, 10 points in division level, you know, you're gonna have those points. But also as a choreographer, especially in the K-pop division, you need to sit and be a supervisor of what you're choreographing, because that's gonna prevent you for having these deductions taken from your 100-point scores. You know, especially when the choreographer is also dancing in the professionals levels, take your time to not dance, but to step aside from your group and supervise what they are doing, because there are things you can easily prevent. If you see there is a, you know, like a really weak transition and maybe they could, you know, trip or crash or something, these are things you need to fix to not get these points deducted from your choreography. So think of the deduction judge as a supervisor and not as a choreographer for this part. Then for specific topics and deductions, I can just tell you to stick to what the rule says. On the poorly executed elements, specifically on the modality of K-pop, sorry, I will never get tired of saying this. Learn about the techniques you're doing, not just learn the choreography that the group or the idol is performing. Learn the techniques so you can you know, do the steps and the movement true to the technique you're doing. You know, if it's jazz, then it's jazz. If it's walking, then it's walking. But learn what you're doing, not just learn the choreography. For the offensive clothing, it's really hard that a K-pop idol or group goes way too sexy. But if that's the case, don't stick to the cover just like that, as we have said before, because if it is too sexy, you can't use that clothes. You know, you need to go with a more family clothing. So be aware of that. Don't just stick to everything you see if you know it, if it's obscene or offensive. Sorry. So yeah, take your time to be a supervisor, not just a choreographer. Take your time to have this list of deductions. And when you see your choreography, mark every deduction if you think you can prevent that from happening. That's my biggest advice on these deductions.
Thank you very much. Yes, very important. And yes, in general, well, sorry, the Korean culture is in some ways very conservative. So it mainly takes care of some of these elements just by the culture that it is surrounded by. Not it's 100%, but a lot more than some other elements, some other cultures of dance. So yes. The other criteria here in deduction will be accidents or fallings of clothing. So here, the elements that are part of the choreography that are maybe props or accessories or things that we are wearing on the costume will take care that they are well sewn, that they are well placed. If they're in the hair, a good amount of bobby pins, whatever you need to keep them in place and not have any accidents that they fall or that the costume rips or is uncomfortable in any way. So here it's going to be important. Also damaged or untidy clothing. Here, the same, that it's correctly worn, that we don't have underwear visible or undergarment, that we don't have our shoelaces untied, that we have everything very tidy and in place where it should be for the performance. Also, choreography inappropriate to division. Very self-explanatory. Keep your choreography age appropriate. We're also going to be seeing altisonance at the start or end or middle of a routine. This will be regarding the expressions of euphoria or maybe even the expressions of names of the crew, of the dance, of the studio that will be part or in the beginning, middle, end that are said or by the dancers or in the music by itself. So here, keep that in mind and avoid including them in your performance. Also, left elements on scene or on stage. Very important. Every element that goes on stage with us should leave the stage with us. So if we put it on the ground, on the floor for any reason, we'll pick it up and leave with it. If it falls, let's check the space around us and pick it up and leave with it also when we finish our choreography. So elements important to keep in mind. This will help the next performance after us have a safe and of course, a better performance. So it's part of the respect as dancers to our colleagues. Use of scenery. Here, the use of scenery is an element that is not needed and will be, of course, even have a deduction. We want the dance, all the elements to tell the story for us. The costume, the music, the expression, everything. Not any element that is going to be there, let's say, looking pretty or helping reinforce an element of the character of the place. So no backings, no elements just there to reinforce. Now, if we're taking an element on stage, first it should be taken by the dancers themselves, and two, it should be part of the choreography, at least in a 30%. So let's say our choreography includes a chair, and we bring a chair on stage, 1, 2, or 3, whatever, and we're using them as part of the choreography, well, then it will be considered a prop. But let's say we bring a chair on stage and we only sit on it at the beginning, stand up, don't use it ever again. Well, there it's going to be considered a scenery because it's just there for some reason that's to make a point about where you're at or something else, but it's not part of the choreography per se. So take a little bit of that into account and take care of the elements that we are going to be including, that they are part of the choreography and that they are brought on stage when they are part of the choreography by the dancers. Also, fans, public, or audience obstructing the judgment. So here, the fans, well, when they're watching and they're supporting the dancers at the beginning, at the end, they can be as loud, as noisy as they want. During the choreography, however, should be done in a respectful and let's say a lower manner where we can appreciate the interpretation, the musicality, and enjoy the performance. So applause and support, but in a controlled manner. Getting off, jumping off, or dropping off stage. Well, the way we should get off stage should be the paths that are marked to do so, not jumping up in front, to the sides, or back, so we can avoid an injury and any possible accident. So here, just keep that in mind. The routine time or choreographic time here, it's an important element because it's something we have to have the knowledge in order not to commit this mistake. Sorry. Now, in All Dance International, we have the choreographic time, not depending on the modality we're dancing, but depending on the subdivision. Subdivision is when the amount of dancers is changed. So that is going to be the element. So we have a maximum choreographic time for each one of the subdivisions. So let's put, for example, a soloist, duet, duo, or trio. This means that in organic code, these choreographies can have a maximum choreographic time of 2 minutes. The choreography lasts 130, 140, no problem. Now, it should not be more than 2 minutes. For every 5 seconds we go over this time, we're going to have a 3-point deduction, and we do not want that. So what is going to happen is that we have to keep our choreography inside the limits. It can be 201, 202 maximum, let's say, because it's after 5 seconds. Now, what happens if our choreography lasts 206? We have a deduction. 205, we have a deduction, and so forth. If it's 207, 2010, we have 6 points deduction, and that way. Now, a high recommendation that I do by my own experience in this process is do not go too much to the limits and to the borders of this 205. When the choreography, when the music actually lasts 204, well, when we're speaking technically and being very strict about the rules, it does not have a deduction. However, and very important, this but is going to be important here. The choreography and the choreographic time is taken by the first movement or sound, and it ends at the last movement or sound. This means our choreographic time and our music may last 204, but if the dancers started a bit early or took 1 second more to get to their pose, or they moved, well, then maybe it will pass up to 205. in the choreographic time, and this will have a deduction. So I highly recommend don't go so far into the borders of the 205 so we can avoid any possible deduction for these dancers. They do, you do, and they do a hard work to take these performances on stage. So any mistake that we can maybe make by just not knowing or not applying the knowledge we know will be very sad to see. Here we also have intellectual property. That is an element that is important in especially other modalities, but here in K-pop, it's not a worry because the intellectual property, the idea is to copy the choreographies. These choreographies do not have the intellectual property rights that the other ones do. Also, regulation infringement. Here, the regulations that are specified in our organic code that are there to keep the environment of the competition safe and the correct execution of the competition. So any infringement that may be complied in overall may imply a deduction of 5 points each. So keep all the details in mind. And last but not least, an increase of unreported dancers. So remember the schedule I told you about at the beginning? Well, when that is sent to us, we can also see the number of dancers registered in my performance. So check if it is correct. If you have to increase the number for any reason, do so by contacting us through email, through WhatsApp, and inform this situation so you do not have maybe a deduction for increase in unreported dancers. So if 5 are registered, not 6 should be on stage, not 7. That will imply a deduction. If you need to increase, well, as I said, do so, but through the correct channels, and that will avoid a deduction here in point. Now, as you can see, most of the deductions, as we were saying, can be avoided. The highest deductions are responsibility normally of the directors, of the choreographers, and the lowest deductions are responsibility of the dancers. That are some things that can happen on stage that sometimes are out of our control or that we can help control more next time. Okay, but yes, it's very important to keep these in mind. Is some other element that you may want to add, Duque, that can help the choreographers in any way?
Yeah, well, as said before, most of the deductions can be prevented, and most of these are self-explained. But a tip that I do want to give, it's that proper mix, mashup, or song development can prevent you from many of these deductions and give you a high score on the modalities and complementary judges. So if you as a choreographer or your choreographer, it's not related to a music management software or music development software, that's something you as a choreographer need to, work, and you need to work in the music, because sometimes we see these groups or performances that just to don't get deducted for the routine time, just trim or cut the music in really awkward places or put these really awkward sound effects, and that affects on how the judge see the choreo, because maybe you have done an amazing dance, you have done an amazing routine choreography through the whole time, but then at the end the final is awkward, and that affects on how the whole thing it's been scored. So please invest on the mix, invest on a proper DJ or music solution, so you can prevent these times for being deducted, or you can prevent a bad score on the musicality or everything that it's involved with the music, because at the end, as dancers, we dance to these musics, and it's hand by hand with your choreography. That's the only tip I just want to give, apart from everything that I've said before.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Very helpful insight, very good details to keep in mind, and that will help and will improve in your choreographic process if, of course, you apply this information that we bring to you with so much care with the best of intentions to help you improve in your choreographies and have better results every time. So it is a pleasure to be able to share this information with you. And that's why we are here, and that's why All Dance has designed these spaces, so we can, of course, clarify any maybe doubts or clarify any misconceptions that we may have about some of the information that is there. So do not doubt to ask questions in our comments, leave us comments. Also, if this has been helpful in any way, that is very important for us as well. So here today we were about K-pop. We had Duque here with us. Also, we've had Fufo in our other workshop. But here it's very important that you also know that all the other workshops we've had of all the modalities are on our YouTube channel in All Dance International Official. And I want to thank All Dance for these spaces, you guys for being here, and especially also Duque for sharing this information, this passion, and with so much selflessness that will help us improve in our choreographies and all our process. So thank you very much for this time and for being and sharing with us, Duque.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for having me. And I'm so jealous because I wish I had all of these workshops, all of these tools when I started choreographing. That would be really, really grateful. And I think this is a great opportunity for everyone starting, for everyone that has competed for a while and had any doubts. These are amazing tools. And thank you, Sandra, for just having this initiative and inviting us to be part of it. I'm really, really happy.
Well, we're glad that it's like that. And yes, it's a very, very helpful tool that these choreographers have. And well, it's better late than never. So here we are having these spaces that is going to every day help us improve. So thank you very much. And remember, some of the workshops have already passed. We have them on our official YouTube channel, but we still have a few more to go. So stay tuned. Tomorrow we're going to be here with Carlos Duque again for Urban Show. It's a very, very interesting modality, so you can't miss it. We'll expect you here. Remember, the schedules are in Panamanian time, and it's been a great pleasure to be here with you. Well, I hope to see you guys very soon here through YouTube or on our competitions with all of this knowledge applied and, well, to have better results. So anything we can do to help you, well, remember, leave us on the comments and we'll be very glad to help you out, to be in touch. So thank you very much. Have a great day, evening, afternoon, wherever you're connected from. Bye-bye.
Didn't break me, didn't stop me. It didn't kill me, didn't drop me. Yeah, I can still feel my heartbeat. Like it didn't faze me, didn't move me. It couldn't hold me, couldn't crush me. Yeah, I can still feel my heartbeat. Like I'm coming back stronger. I'm gonna fight harder. I'm coming back stronger. I'm coming back. I'm coming back stronger. I'm coming back stronger. You can try me, take your best shot. You can show me what you got. But I'll be the last one standing.